Hello, everybody. How are you out there? It's Kelly, your solar system ambassador, and I'm back to do a debrief of the exciting day that has been going on at NASA. If you haven't heard by now, the Orion spacecraft has successfully splashed down in the Pacific Ocean just a few hours ago. Such an amazing day. I had to reapply some makeup because I was very teary-eyed watching the live splashdown. An incredible day for NASA. They're all celebrating, breathing a collective sigh of relief that everybody performed as well, just as long as the spacecraft did as well. So they just conducted their press conference and talked a little bit about the mission. They don't really have a ton of data back yet because they're still in the process of recovering the spacecraft from the ocean. And I'll show you hopefully a live shot of that just in a few minutes. But I just wanted to show you some of the really great photos during reentry and splashdown for you. So here we go. And as you see here, this is the not the spacecraft, the USS Portland off the coast of Guadalupe Island, which was about 300 miles south of San Diego, waiting patiently for the spacecraft to enter Earth's atmosphere so it could do its recovery. One of the wonderful, surprising things that I didn't know we would get to see on reentry were the cameras from inside the spacecraft. We were able to see some of the images as the spacecraft was coming back through the atmosphere. Just incredible imagery. This is basically the perspective of what astronauts would see upon reentry. And as it performed its skip maneuver, which sort of like skipping a stone across a pond, it did this skip maneuver to try to bleed off some of the speed because it was coming in back into Earth's atmosphere at 25,000 miles per hour. So they did this skip maneuver where they would dip into the atmosphere and then reorient the spacecraft to skip off the atmosphere and do sort of an arc. And then it did a second entry. And at that point, the chutes started to deploy to slow it down even further. But some of these images are just absolutely incredible, seeing it from an inside capsule perspective. And here you see now it's inside the Earth's atmosphere. We can see the sun off in the distance there too. And if you look sort of sideways to the right of the image, that is the ocean right there. And you see a little bit of cloud cover, but it was an absolutely perfect, beautiful weather day for the reentry and splashdown. This is a photo of the drogue chutes that come out. There were some pilot chutes that came out first, then the drogue chutes are the next set of parachutes that come out. That helps to stabilize the spacecraft a little bit as it's coming back in at such a high rate of speed. But the drogue chutes are also instrumental in helping the main chutes deploy as well. And once you hear NASA announce we have 3 good main chutes, everybody just, as I said earlier, breathes a collective sigh of relief that the parachutes deployed and deployed correctly and slowing the spacecraft down as they are designed to do. And they said the target speed at splashdown was going to be about 20 miles per hour, which is pretty gentle for eventually when astronauts are inside for splashdown. So, what an incredible feat for a spacecraft to be traveling at 25,000 miles per hour and slow it all the way down to 20 right at splashdown. Very, very incredible. As they said before, they allowed the spacecraft to be powered up for about 2 hours because they needed to check a bunch of telemetry and data about the heat distribution inside and outside the space capsule, just so they know because the outside of the spacecraft on reentry heats up to about 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about half the heat of the sun. So that's pretty hot. And as they explained during the press conference, once it splashes down, that heat is going to be reabsorbed into the spacecraft, into the cabin. And they wanted to see how well the inside stayed cooled because eventually, astronauts will be inside and they don't want them to be too hot inside. They'll be in their spacesuits. So As they said, they believe the spacecraft stayed at a nice, cool 71 degrees inside after splashdown. So that is a beautiful temperature for the astronauts to just be bobbing in the ocean until they are recovered. So very, very exciting day that we had a successful completion of the Artemis I test mission. The SLS performed perfectly. The Orion spacecraft performed perfectly. Both spacecraft performed above expectations for NASA to the point where they were able to add a bunch of extra test maneuvers, test procedures that they could really push the spacecraft, both of them, to beyond their capabilities, just so they have an idea of what margin that they have in the future when crews are aboard as to what they can have the spacecraft perform and do. They said for the target location of splashdown, they weren't exactly on target, but they were only 2.5 miles off the actual center target of the splashdown location. And their error of margin is about 5.4 miles of a radius from the center of that target where they hit. And they were, as I said, about 2.1 miles from that target. So they are extremely happy that they got that close to dead center of the target of the splashdown location. So just so exciting. I'm so happy. Congratulations to everybody at NASA and the European Space Agency who was responsible for the service module portion of the spacecraft, and all of the partners that contributed to this successful test mission. So last thing I wanted to leave you with is a live image. Hopefully, the image is still going well. It's out in the middle of the ocean, so the signal comes and goes. But this is right. They are literally live. This is a live shot. Hopefully, if it comes back in, of the Orion spacecraft recovery. They waited the 2 hours, and there it goes. There's the live image. They waited the 2 hours to get all the data that they needed about the heat redistribution and other data sets that they needed to calculate and record. And then they powered down the spacecraft, and then they allowed the Navy and other NASA personnel to approach the spacecraft. They have started to attach the lines to it, and they're going to start towing it back to the inside of the ship for the USS Portland. And then they will go ahead and bring it back to San Diego, or they're going to conduct a bunch of tests on it, see how well the heat shield performed now that they'll be able to see it with their own eyes, and do a lot of tests. And then eventually they're going to bring it back to Florida so they can do an additional amount of testing to the spacecraft. There are components of this Orion spacecraft that they're going to take apart, take out, and then use for Artemis II and that Orion spacecraft, because that will be a completely new spacecraft that they're already in the process of building. Artemis II is still slated for 2024, and they said during the press conference today that they're hoping to be able to name the astronauts, the crew for Artemis II, in early spring of 2023. So everybody eyes will be on who they're going to name to be the crew to ride aboard Artemis II. And Artemis II will just be going around the moon and coming back. They won't be landing on it. That will be slated for possibly Artemis III and Artemis IV, which will be in the near future. And I know 2 years sounds like a long time before we get Artemis II, but it'll be here before you know it. Time always seems to fly when things are going on with the space program. So the 2 years will be here before we know it when we're launching Artemis II. So thank you very much for watching the live coverage if you caught it earlier this morning. And again, if you're just joining us right now, Splashdown was successful of the Orion spacecraft in the Pacific Ocean. And Splashdown was right on target at 12:40 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which was 9:40 a.m. here, West Coast time. I hope you're doing well out there. Thanks again for watching, and I will be back very soon with another video. Bye.